are alarming. Will, thank you very much for an update there. Meanwhile, the coronavirus pandemic is wreaking havoc on the U.S. Postal Service here. Revenues are plunging, and House Democrats warn that the system is just months away from service interruptions or being unable to pay the 600,000 Americans who work there. But President Trump is standing in the way of efforts to fix the problem. CNN's Jessica Dean is live in Washington to explain why. So what have you learned, Jessica?
Well, good morning to you, Allison. We know that the Postal Service has struggled economically for a while now, but the Postmaster General is saying that the pandemic is having a devastating effect on its business and calls this moment a critical juncture.
The U.S. Postal Service is sounding the alarm. Without financial assistance from the government, it will be out of cash by the end of September as the COVID-19 pandemic accelerates its pre-existing financial perils.
We expect to see a 50% decline by this summer. That means half the volume of mail will not be there, including the revenue associated with it. That's catastrophic.
Virginia Democratic Congressman Gerry Connolly chairs the House Oversight Subcommittee that oversees the USPS.
If there were a disruption in service or severe curtailment because of these financial circumstances, the areas that will be immediately impacted are rural parts of America, largely represented by Republicans. So I have a lot of Republican allies on postal issues in the House.
The bipartisan Postal Service Board of Governors appointed by President Donald Trump has asked for $25 billion in direct funding, $25 billion in borrowing authority, and $25 billion in grants to modernize the post office. But when House Democrats asked for $25 billion in funding during the stimulus talks, sources tell CNN the Trump administration rejected the idea. Instead, the Postal Service was offered the opportunity to apply for $10 billion in loans.
I'll tell you who's the demise of the Postal Service are these internet companies that give their stuff to the Postal Service. I don't run the Postal Service.
President Trump has repeatedly criticized the Postal Service, often blaming its economic problems on companies like Amazon.
They lose money every time they deliver a package for Amazon or these other internet companies, these other companies that deliver. They drop everything in the post office. They say, you deliver it. And if they'd raise the prices by actually a lot, then you'd find out that the post office could make money or break even. But they don't do that.
Connolly says package delivery accounts for roughly 5% of total mail volume and about 30% of revenue.
I think the president loves to have enemies, and one of his favorites is Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon. And in his press conference last week, he absurdly asserted that the Postal Service would be fine if they just raised prices on companies like Amazon. Now, nobody who knows the economy of our postal delivery system believes that.
The country's founding fathers believed the Postal Service was so essential, they put it in the Constitution. It ensures many Americans receive necessary medicine and other critical items. The United States Postal Service is now at a critical moment of its existence amid an unprecedented pandemic. And Connolly says it's President Trump and his administration who must act.
His own understanding of the Constitution is clearly lacking very fundamentally. And unfortunately, the Postal Service is one of the casualties of that lack of understanding.
Now, as for the postal workers themselves, they've, of course, continued working throughout all of this pandemic. And like so many essential workers, that puts them dangerously close to exposure to the virus. At the beginning, Connolly says they didn't have access to things like hand sanitizer and protective equipment. We know that many people have fallen ill. And sadly, John, the Postal Service has also suffered some deaths